Carried out to center on a quick break. Right back out here. Chromiak to Wisdom. Over to right. Scored! Shane Wright, there it is. His 37th goal of his rookie year. Set up by his line mates, Chromiak and Wisdom. There it is, very early in this one tonight. So he gets that right out of the way, just like he said that he was going to try here to get it out of the way as soon as possible here on this road trip. Wisdom, along with Chromiak, set him up. So there it is, the rookie goal record for the Kingston franchise, his 37th of the year.
He might be the longest-serving voice in the league. We'd have to fact-check that one. 41 years he's been around. And Jim Gilchrist, voice of the Kingston Frontenacs, radio play-by-play man. Nice to have you on today. I'm sure we could talk for hours.
Thank you, Josh. Great to be with you here.
Jim and I have a bit of a history, given I worked in Belleville for a number of years. So, we'd go up and down the 401 and play each other 8 times a year. Those Frontenacs Bulls games, those were some of the best, weren't they?
Still remaining friends throughout all that. Yeah, I missed those. It was something, saw Jack Miller back here in January when I did a Utica Belleville Senators game there in the American Hockey League. And boy, some old times sure came back when I went back to that arena for the first time since the big changeover, and reminisced there with Jack Miller that night. Boy, we had some great times there.
Well, a lot can be said about your time behind the microphone in Kingston. Maybe give us a snapshot into your career, how you came to be the voice of the franchise, and maybe give us an idea of a few things you enjoy doing outside of the job.
Well, it all began for me anyway back in my hometown of Oshawa. From the Whitby, Oshawa area originally. Worked at the radio station there in my last couple of years of high school from '69, and then walked into a full-time job there in '72, and started doing Oshawa Generals games there in '72 as well. Rick Middleton, his last year in junior, was my first year doing the games there in Oshawa. So I was there until 1980. Max Jackson, who was an institution here in Kingston, of course, I met him at the OHL dinner, the awards dinner the night before the draft in 1980, in the summer of that year. And he said that he was leaving the job for doing the Canadiens games because his wife was quite ill at that time. So the job was coming up, and also for assistant sports director at the radio station as well. So told me to send down a tape, and so I did, and got the job here in 1980 and moved down and been here ever since.
Quite a past, and of course, for many of us listening, a lot of these things happened before we were even born, myself included. So
you didn't have to say that now. Thanks so very much.
I'm dating you.
Yeah, thanks.
So with that in mind, I mean, if you had to pick a player, or maybe to make this a little easier, because I'm putting you on the spot, maybe a handful of players that have left a real strong impression in Kingston, whether as a Canadian or as a Frontenac, maybe a few of your favorites, who would those be?
Obviously, I think number one, Chris Clifford, the goaltender. I called his goal, the first one by a Canadian Hockey League goaltender. That was back in January of '86. That was against the Toronto Marlies, so it was great calling that. And he's still in the city of Kingston here with his family. He's a well-known lawyer here in town. So he was probably number one on the list there. And we just, of course, had a great night for him back in December last year there when they hung his sweater up here at the Leon Center. So it's great to know him on and off the ice. A great individual.
Burke heading to the Marlies bench for the extra attacker while Tester blasts one in. Clifford catching it, puts it down, and backhands it down the ice. It's rolling, scores! Chris Clifford scores the goal for the Canadiens. History here tonight, folks. The first OHL goaltender to score a goal.
Maybe before we fast forward to the present, one guy who I know has made big contributions to the franchise over the years is former Bill Long Award recipient. I know Larry Mavity's still around the Leon Center on game nights. How often do you see Mav, and is he still good for some good hockey talk? I'm sure the two of you have shared a lot of experiences.
Mav and I go way back to, in fact, that's how I got the nickname Cookie when we saw him back when I was in Oshawa. We were also doing Ontario Fastball League games, the Oshawa Tonys, and he was catcher for the Belleville team. So we were out in the parking lot after a game one time and having a couple of Pepsis there after a game, and introduced myself, and he says, "Oh, Gilchrist." He says, "Any relation to Cookie?" Because there was a Cookie Gilchrist who was a halfback at that time of the Toronto Argos. And I just said, well, no, he's got the better tan, but he's still a brother than me. So we had a great conversation there. And so that's where the nickname Cookie began. And ironically enough, Josh, I just had a great conversation with Mav here this morning. I came into the Leon Center here this morning and followed him in. So had a great conversation as usual again with Mav. He's great around the league. It's been an honor to know guys like him, Brian Kilray, away from the rink and everything else. So it's Mav's very dear friend, great guy.
Kingston got its first taste of an exceptional status player this past season, one who seemingly got better with each passing game. Maybe you can put Shane Wright's season into words for us and what a thrill it was to be able to see him progress from game one to the final game of the regular season.
As a 15-year-old, just unbelievable on and off the ice. A great kid, great family that he came from. He impressed everybody here that first day that he was honored here at City Hall and introduced to the city. And it just went on from there. And a future captain of this team, I think, coming up because he showed the leadership on bus rides and everything else, just taking care of cleaning up the bus and loading the bus and after a game as well. So just a super kid. And he just got better the time as the season went on. And he just owned other teams, it seemed, and set the pace for games, especially in the latter half of the season. From December on, he could just take over a game as he did in Flint that night when he set the record for most goals by a rookie by a Kingston player.
The past few years in Kingston have been eventful, to say the least. The team reached the Eastern Conference Final for the first time in a long time in 2018. Then there was a trying year as a rebuilding team in 2019. And then, as we mentioned, the excitement of this past season, even with all things COVID mixed in there. A bit of a shakeup in recent months, though, for the Frontenacs. The dismissal of head coach Curtis Foster, bring in Paul McFarland, who led the Fronts to their first East Division title in roughly 20 years in 2016. And then just last week, the club announced general manager Darren Kiley won't be back next season. Seems the wheels are turning, and, longtime owner Doug Springer and those alongside him, they seem to have a vision for where they'd like to see things go moving into the future.
Yeah, it's been quite the eventful couple of weeks. I think our original interview was set to be last week there when that came out about Darren being dismissed. But certainly it's something that comes up and you've just got to accept it, go on here. I think the future is going to be great with Shane Wright leading the way here on the ice. No idea who they're going to bring in as general manager. A few names have popped up. In fact, we were kidding there that we were going to announce here today that Mav was going to be back as general manager, but I think I can squelch that one right here now and say no. But you never know. No, it's been a lot of changes around here recently, and I got in touch with Doug there late last week to see if I should have my bags packed, but he didn't say anything about that, so I think I'm going to be okay.
We talked about obviously number 51 there, Shane Wright, but we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss a few other accomplishments by young players. I mean, namely Zaid Wisdom scored 29 goals last season, a big step up for him. And then the offensive punch packed by both of the CHL import draft additions, Martin Chromiak and Vitaly Pinchuk, certainly gave, Shane some guys to work with and some real talent up front there. Yeah,
Chromiak joined the team, and his first game, I remember, was up in Ottawa. So quite a introduction to the OHL right away against the best team of the league right there. But he just fit in so well with that line, and they just took over right from there on and just owned a lot of teams over the last 3 or 4 months of the season there, and they just seemed to mesh nicely. Shane was doing everything, Chromiak with his great speed and set up for Shane, and Wiz would go into the corners, do some dirty work there, but also came up with some pretty goals as well. So that line, I know, is going to be our number one here this year leading the way.
I know you've seen a lot over your, time behind the microphone with the Frontenacs and going all the way back to the Canadians in the 80s. But one thing you haven't seen is an OHL championship. We go back to our discussion a minute ago just about ownership's vision for the team in the immediate future. And, you have to imagine a championship is really in their sights, particularly when you take into account the window they're going to have here with Shane Wright in the lineup for at least the next couple seasons.
Yeah, I think it's something that I've always wanted here in Kingston. They've deserved it over the last few years here, especially years ago there when we went right to the conference final and everything. That seemed to be close. Same with a couple of other years that we got to the conference final but just lost out. So it really has been frustrating that way that they haven't picked up anything. I know the city would go crazy here and pack the Leon Center here if the further they go into games like that. It would certainly draw the big crowds. Hopefully here in the future that'll be allowed here, but we'll see. But certainly that's been one thing that has certainly been missing from the championship season here.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where things go, in the coming season, whenever that gets underway. The Oshawa Generals look like they'll be a tough 2 points, obviously, with their bid to host the Memorial Cup. But the Ottawa and Peterborough both going to be shedding some veteran guys due to graduation. Maybe an opportunity for the Frontenacs to really have a competitive group once the 2020 season gets underway, I would think.
Yeah, a good young team, I think, Josh, still. And they've got that depth, I think, coming into this season, which they haven't had the last couple of years, and good second, third line even that they're going to really have, I think, this coming season whenever we get that going. I think that's been the story over the last couple of years there. That depth just wasn't there, maybe for the top two lines, but certainly not into 3 and 4. And I think they're going to have that coming up this year.
Jim Gilchrist, it's been a pleasure to speak with someone with so much experience in the league. I'm sure we could go on for hours here, but it's a nice hot day outside, so I won't keep you. We'll see you around the rink. Thanks for joining me today.